Chwarae is the leading gender equality charity here in Wales. And since 1992, we've been working to ensure women can enter the workplace, develop their skills and build rewarding careers. We have a vision of a Wales where every woman and girl is treated equally, is able to fully participate in the economy and in public and political life, and live safe from violence and fear. We offer a number of services here at Chwarae that can help support girls, women and businesses across Wales. We also work closely with decision makers and government in Wales to ensure our country is fair and inclusive for women and to ensure they have a platform for their voices to be heard. So tonight we are doing LeadHerShip, so welcome to that. LeadHerShip is one of the many exciting programmes we deliver at Chwarae, providing women with the opportunity to role shadow incredible women in a variety of leadership roles across the sectors in Wales and beyond. We want decision-making roles in Wales to be gender equal, diverse and representative and able to serve the people of Wales. Now, pre-pandemic, our LeadHerShip programme, which provided participants with a role shadowing day, where they would visit a leader's place of work, find out what it takes to be a leader, learn how decisions are made, attend meetings and events, meet the team and more, providing an insight into a typical day at work. Unfortunately, due to the world right now, we've decided to move her LeadHerShip online, where we will hear from inspirational women in a variety of leadership roles. You will hear their journey, their career journeys, and how they ended up in the career they currently have. We'll have a panel discussion at the end and also an opportunity for you at home to ask questions that you may have. So I'm delighted to welcome our awesome guest speakers today, whose pictures still haven't come up on the screen, even though they should be there. So we have Khushboo Patel, Local Director of Metro Bank, and Amanda Dorel, SME and Mid-Corporate Regional Director, Lloyds Bank. As you can see, they're on the right-hand side there, so you should be able to see them. Each speaker will share their career journey with us, and if you have any questions for our guests, then please pop them into the chat function. I will answer those at the end once you've heard from both speakers. So can I ask, first of all, Khushboo, if you could please come on, introduce yourself and tell us how you've made it to where you are.
Absolutely. So I've got some slides I'm going to share. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Lovely. So hello everyone, I'm Khushboo. As Nikki kindly introduced me, I am a local director at Metro Bank. It's really lovely to be amongst you ladies this evening. Tonight I'm going to share my story with you. I'm going to take you through my career journey, which looks a little bit like that. I'm going to talk about some highlights and some lowlights, but most importantly, I wanted to share with you my 5 stars of learnings. Just a few things that I hope will support and inspire you in your journey. So let's start over 20 years ago. I was 15 years old in high school, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed and me owning hair straighteners, as you can see. But at this point, I had my career laid out due to 2 incredibly inspirational business studies teachers. I wanted to be an economist, and that was my plan. So in 2003, I set off from Cardiff to the big bad city of London to study, surprise, surprise, economics. In my final year of university, I stuck to the plan. I got a job in the Government Economic Service and I was all set. Or was I? So this is when I learned my first lesson, and that is things change. I was so adamant on being an economist, I guess I had some tunnel vision. And whilst it's absolutely right to have a plan, it's even better to be flexible because life changes, jobs change, companies change. I mean, we know more than anything in the last 18 months or so that things are forever changing. And like, how many people have had a 5-year plan And out of those 5-year plans, how many of them have actually stuck to exactly what those plans were? And I think the answer would be not very many. So it's absolutely okay if things change. And if it's not as you planned, it's fine. You can erase and rebuild. So keeping that flexibility in mind, I opened my eyes up to other career paths, and business and finance appeared. And whilst my first love was economics, I felt some butterflies at the sound of banking. So in 2007, I joined RBS Group's graduate scheme. And following this, I became a corporate manager's assistant in Bristol. Whilst the people were great, the environment was really, really hard. There was structural change after structural change, and the new graduate was the least of everyone's priorities. So as I ticked along doing my various roles, in 2009, one of the structural changes found me in a credit risk role. In the first week, I was the only one in this newly formed team, and I had no line manager. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but it served me really well to plan an ace 25th wedding anniversary party for my parents. But in all seriousness, in my career, I was quite lost. So 2 weeks later, I finally had a line manager. And out of the 12 odd that I've had in my career, this was the first of the 4 absolutely incredible ones. So this line manager gave me my purpose. He supported me, but most valuably, he led me, and he taught me the second lesson. And this is all about knowing your value. So for the first time, I started to exceed expectations and grow myself. The line manager gave me confidence to try things and build things in a newly formed team, and it was brilliant. He was really, really adamant that I didn't need to change who I was. He said, you can grow, but you don't need to change yourself. You need to back yourself in who you are. Because I don't know about you, but quite often I feel the need to change who I am to fit a certain mould or a job role or a certain title. Well, you don't have to, because you are who you are and you can absolutely grow and develop. Just don't change. You can back yourself. So I backed myself into my first leadership position in 2011. And then in 2013, I needed to back myself again, more than ever, actually, because this time I wanted to go for a double promotion to be a commercial manager. I was confident I had worked really, really hard to get to this position, but it was not the way it went. You had to be a business manager first and a commercial manager after. So regardless, I submitted my application and I was interviewed. Post-interview, I received some really honest feedback. The interviewers told me that I was being interviewed for, in inverted commas, experience. However, as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh God, here we go. But the next sentence was, my hard work and preparation shone through so much that they wouldn't be doing the role justice if they didn't offer me the job. And so I was offered a commercial manager role. I moved into being a commercial manager, and along came the second of 4 incredible line managers. So this line manager coached me into becoming the youngest commercial director in early 2015, and my career was in full flow. Then, at the end of 2015, that line manager left and another one came into situ. Me being me, always wanting to help, I immediately congratulated my new boss. I told him I couldn't wait for him to start, took the liberty of setting him up on all the new systems. I made a summary of all our team progress and a crib sheet of all the projects we're working on. And it's just who I am. So then at our first one-to-one, I was completely thrown for 6 when my new boss told me I shouldn't be in the job I am and I'm punching above my weight. And all of this, whilst the summaries I was showing him were showing that I was topping most of the KPIs. So on various other occasions, this person went on to tell me that I would never progress in the bank, and then I lacked experience. And then after a few weeks, when I had the courage to sit him down and tell him he was wrong, and that he was affecting my motivation, he laughed at me and said, well, you got the promotion to director, didn't you? I tried everything I could, but nothing seemed to get through to him. And that's when I learned my 3rd star, and this is a really important one. It's about calling for help. It's about surrounding yourself with a trusted support system, because you will need it and it's okay. And this is professionally and personally. At this point in my career, I felt quite low and demoralised. If it was somebody else, if it was a friend, a family member, I'd absolutely say, don't listen to them. Just, you are great in what you do. But how many times have you been told something that you know is completely true or unfair, but when it's in relation to you, you just believe it? Well, I believed it. And for a few months, I didn't tell anyone. Then I met with one of my mentors. Now, note, I said one of my mentors because over the years, I've learned it's important to have a small army of people to go to for different things. Anyway, this mentor reminded me of a past lesson, and that's knowing my value. And with this in mind, he highlighted an opportunity for me in a different area of the bank and facilitated an introduction. I applied for a role within the entrepreneurship team and I got the job. It was 2017 and I was back on track, making my mark on the Welsh entrepreneurial landscape. Then a few months into this role, I got a call from an ex-colleague of mine who was working at Metro Bank. He said to me that Metro Bank were moving into Wales and would I be interested in joining? Hand on heart, at that time I said I'm not, but I did want to catch up with him, but also I wanted to know more about the competitor that was moving into my patch. So off I went to meet this ex-colleague and old friend at a Metro Bank store. Now, I've never been to a Metro Bank store at that point, and I don't know if any of you have, but if you haven't, I certainly had no idea what to expect. But Metro Bank stores are very different from most traditional banking premises. So think bright colours and big glass panes. When I went into this store, it was half term and there was a kids club going on. I spotted dogs, which really took my heart because I'm a massive dog person, so being dog friendly was a big thumbs up. But I spent the day with a variety of people, leaving with a feeling of intrigue and a book written by Metro Bank's founder. So I read it cover to cover and I thought, this is great. It's not rocket science, nothing new in there, but it was all about customer centricity. It was definitely something I wanted to be part of, and so I went ahead and met the regional director of Metro Bank, and he told me this. Here's the thing, Khushboo, the job is to bring a brand new bank into Wales, and this is what led me to lesson 4, and that is stretching beyond your limits. Don't be afraid of trying something that seems impossible, and don't set yourself limits. You will come across lots of people wrongly who will set limits for you. You don't need to do that too. Bringing a brand new bank into Wales sounded really exciting, but also so scary. Starting up a brand new bank, a new job, new people, lots and lots of change. So I decided to call on help. And this was a different person from within my mentoring circle. This person is known for being quite blunt and to the point. And actually, sometimes I know I need that. So he asked me why I was debating the role. And I said, what if I am not good enough? And he quite rightly called my bluff and said, that's absolutely rubbish, Khushboo. If you want to do it, you'll do it. And if you don't, stop wasting everyone's time. As blunt as that. And he was right. So I decided to take the plunge, pushed my boundaries, stretched my own limits, and I applied for the role, which led me to join Metro Bank in 2018. So at Metro Bank, it's absolutely amazing, immersed in an incredible culture, an amazing set of values. And it brought me to the last lesson, which is embedded in everything that we do at Metro Bank, and it's about growing other people. So every single person has a story. Each of you listening, you have a story, and each of you have strengths. And it's really important that we help and support each other by sharing them. I've shared my career journey a few times now, and the first time I was asked to, I remember thinking, why would somebody want to hear from me? What have I got to add? But the truth is, we all have our own strengths and we all have our own things that would help other people. So it's really, really important to know that, so know your value in that and share it with other people because you can help so many others. And that brings me to my career kit. So the summary of the 5 tips: things change and it's absolutely fine. Just keep your eraser handy. Know your value. Call for help, stretch beyond your limits, and grow other people. And that is me.
Wow. Thank you, Khushboo. That was really, really interesting. I'm sure everybody else felt the same as well. So if you want to ask any questions, please put it into the chat or wait until the end, because Amanda, you're going to have to follow that. Sorry.
It's a hard act to follow, Khushboo. Excellent, really excellent.
Absolutely amazing yourself, Amanda.
And as I talk about my career story, there's quite a lot of overlap, so which is encouraging, but really fabulous story, Khushboo, and well done you. Goodness, especially the line manager who said you were punching above your weight. I don't know if you saw my face when you said that, but oh my God, that's incredible. So evening all. So I'm Amanda Dorel. I'm a regional director for the SME and the mid-corporate business across Midlands and South Wales for the Lloyds Banking Group, and I'm absolutely delighted to be supporting Quora Teg's event this evening, because gender diversity is particularly important to me, and you'll probably understand a little bit more when I pull out some of the lowlights, shall we say, of my 35-year career with the Lloyds Banking Group. So I'll take you back to 1987, where I suspect some of you on tonight's event weren't even born, but I think it's fair to say it was very different times then. So I was a bright pupil at a grammar school, just completed my A-levels. My teachers were encouraging me to attend university, but my mother had very different intentions. Her view was, go and get a job until you marry a man. So I think that just goes to show some of the differences 30 odd years ago. So I took her advice and I fell into banking. I fell into Lloyds Bank. My stepfather was in personnel at the time, which was quite handy. So I got interviewed and taken on, and unlike Khushboo, who obviously had a fantastic plan, I didn't have a plan. It was a case of, I'm not being encouraged to go to university, I'll go and get a job. Now, I'm still sat here 35 years later, so it was a really good unplanned decision, and I've loved every year of it. So, you know, in a way, I'll thank my mum, who wouldn't know it at the time, but obviously pushed me in the right direction. So I joined at 18, and back in those days, there was piles of checks that got processed. So my first job was, the customers would come in with their pile of checks from the weekend, and I would sit there and put them through a very old-fashioned machine and make sure they balanced. So it was quite manual work, but I quickly worked out that at the time the group were employing about 120,000 people, and I also worked out at the time that if you're prepared to work, you could have whatever career you wanted. The sky's the limit. So I quickly applied for the management development scheme, which I was eligible for as an A-level candidate, and I guess that was my second challenge with diversity, because I went along for the assessment day where I took a variety of courses, and then I was interviewed. I was interviewed by 4 white males sat behind a panel table, all looking over the top of their glasses at me and saying, well, Miss Heard, because that was my maiden name, have you got a boyfriend, and when are you going to marry him? So again, I think that just shows the context of the time. Banking was a very traditional male business, and they fully expected their bright young sparks to get married and drift off. I'm really pleased to say that banking has changed considerably, and actually there's a huge amount of work that goes on across the whole industry to make sure that we retain talent. And I'll talk a little bit about having my two daughters. So I was on the management scheme, and at that point, Khushboo, you'll be pleased, I did get a plan. So I decided then I had a very clear plan. I was going to work my way through the what is the retail banking service, so end up with a big branch to line manage and lead. So I had a plan. But similarly to Khushboo's voiceover, don't necessarily stick to your plan. Things can change. And my big moment of truth was I'd got to the point where I was running a very small branch down in Bournemouth. So I'd sort of got my first foot on the career leadership ladder. And 2 of my customers started to have a big fight in the banking hall. I think it was fair to say it wasn't a particularly nice part of Bournemouth. And at that point, all-female branch, me as the manager, it took me to go out into the banking hall and physically separate them, and as best I could eject them from the premises. And it just so happened on that day, a job advert, an internal job advert, had landed on my desk. They used to be faxed back then. There was no fax through, and it was for a business banking manager in Wiltshire. And I thought, I quite fancy working with business clients. So that was my, I deviated from my plan. I deviated from my plan deliberately. And if I saw those 2 men now, I would thank them, because again, that was a real moment of truth for me. It prompted me to apply for a different job in a different part of the bank, and I was successful. And then I spent a period of time looking after business clients, from hairdressers to bakers to architects, and just loved the variety that role gave me. But I was itching for the leadership bit again. So having run a small branch with a small team of staff, I was really keen to get back into leadership. So with the support of Lloyds Banking Group, attended quite a lot of leadership courses, and there was a particular role which gave me the best of both worlds. It enabled me to lead a small business banking team, but also have my own small portfolio of clients. So I really love that role, because for me, I had the best of both worlds. But over the years then, I started to leave the clients a little bit behind, and spent more and more time doing leadership roles. So, and I'd still have some contact with clients, and you can see a picture I'm particularly proud of behind me was me presenting the Lloyds Banking National Business Award for the SME of the Year last week in London. But more and more over the last sort of 20 years or so, I've got into leadership roles, specifically with the commercial bank, but less so working directly with the clients. And what I've been really able to enjoy during that time is a lot of flexibility. So I talked earlier about my two daughters, and what I was unable to do was return to work 3 days a week after I had my oldest daughter, Jasmine, and at one stage just 1 day a week with a job share partner when I had my younger daughter, Hayley. And that's my next tip. Why was I able? So I was able to negotiate those sort of flexible contracts because I had a really strong brand. So leaders within the business knew that I could, I'd get the job done. In fact, one leader actually said to me, I'd rather have you in the business 3 days a week than some of your colleagues 5 days a week. So again, there's something in around, be really clear about what you want. So I was clear about, this is the working contract I would prefer for my particular time in life, but have that strong brand to back it up, because if you've got both, you're much more likely to negotiate the next career step or the next agile working step or whatever it is that is your particular goal. And then similar to Khushboo's voiceover, there's been highlights to the career and there's been lowlights. And about 10 years ago, I was made redundant from the group, and or I was faced with redundancy. I'm still here, so clearly it had a good outcome in the end. But I was served with notice, and it was just one of those things. Khushboo talked earlier about, reorganisational designs. They can be quite common in banking, and it was just one of those things of, wrong place, wrong time. I was in a flexible role, reduced hours, balancing the needs of my family, and that particular role just did not exist in the future structure, and it wasn't a reflection on me or my performance, just wrong place, wrong time. And I had a real choice at that time. I had a choice of increasing my hours and going back to a full-time role, or taking what was a demotion. And I chose a demotion. And actually, that's my next tip to you all. Sometimes having a career that goes that way isn't necessarily good for you. I had a career that actually went like that, and it was a fantastic role. Although it was less senior than the one I was made redundant from, it had a huge amount of different stakeholders that I started to engage with, different skills that I learned, and I learned so much more from that particular role. Despite it being a lower grade, actually it developed me immensely. So it meant that when I then applied back to my previous level, I went into the pot alongside similar people applying at a senior level already, and I got the job before them because my CV just read better, my skill set just read better, and my development plan. So my next tip is, don't necessarily think you've got to chase something that looks like that. It might be something that looks like that. You might go sideways. And as I say, in my particular case, I stand by, that was probably the best decision I ever made from a career point of view. And then I'll go back to this point I made earlier about be really clear about what you want. So one of the things I've definitely learned along the way is sometimes you assume people know what you want. So why do I say this? I've got a really good example of that. I was working about 5 years ago for a very senior regional managing director. So in real terms, sort of managed half the country in the commercial bank. So very, very senior. And he had a regional director gap that he needed to fill for 6 months of comment. And he filled it without coming to me. And I actually wanted that opportunity. And I remember being really upset that he'd overlooked me. I knew him really well. I thought he knew my career ambitions. And I remember marching into his office and saying, "Why didn't you think of me?" And he said, "Because you never told me that's what you wanted to do." So I think my next tip is be really clear about what you want. It's very easy to work hard and achieve your KPIs and think that everybody's spotting you. But actually, unless you really come out there and say, "That's the role I want, how are you going to help me get there?" People don't necessarily, know what you want. So I was really clear with him that day. And thankfully, 4 months later, another regional director role came up. And that time he phoned me straight away and said, "I've got a secondment. It's in the Midlands and South Wales. Would you like to go in?" And I bit his hand off. And thankfully, that is a good news story, because that was about 4 years ago. It started as a secondment. It came up as a permanent position. I applied for it along with other people, and got the role, and are still in it now. So and I love it. It's out of all the 35 years, it's the role I've thrive in the most. What does it mean? I've got 90 relationship managers, so the business banking managers that you may well see sat in branches, in the high streets and in big Lloyds Bank offices. Their role is to look after our SME and our mid-corporate clients. They do a fabulous job of that. I'm super proud of them. As I say, they stretch from Leicester down to Pembroke Dock, and they're predominantly customers that turn over about 3 million to about 100 million a year. And what I'm particularly proud of is if I just think about the last 18 months and how we've responded to the need to support particularly SMEs during what has been a very difficult time with the pandemic, then super proud of the team. And as I say, events like this last week, just seeing businesses thrive and businesses do everything they need to do to support the local economies, it just brings a huge smile to my face. So that's me. That's 35 minutes in, or so 35 years in a few minutes. I say I wouldn't want to do every role with you, because you wouldn't get into bed tonight, because 35 years is a long time. But believe you me, it's gone in a flash. I can't believe it when I look back. Sometimes it doesn't seem that long since I was that fresh-faced 18-year-old knocking on the pass door at Wilton branch. But if I was to leave you with some tips, I'd definitely re-emphasise, be really clear about what you want in your career, and make sure the people that make those decisions know that, so you're well connected with the right stakeholders. I think Khushboo's voiceover about mentors is just brilliant. If I look back, I've never been good at having a mentor over those 35 years, and I wonder whether I could have accelerated quicker with one. And I've had lots of opportunity to have them, so the bank are very good at mentoring schemes, but I've always kept my head down and thought, I'll keep just doing this job, so invest in you, invest in your own development, invest in meeting mentors. That's really important time. It isn't just about doing the job you're in. But be prepared to take a knockback. So Khushboo talks about her knockback was a pivotal time in her career. My knockback was a pivotal time. It will happen, but come out bigger and stronger. And I think this whole strong brand, be good at what you do, definitely will help you negotiate the career that you want to channel. And I've seen that with my own career, and clearly Khushboo talks about her brand and how that's really enabled her to get some great opportunities as well. So they're my tips. Hopefully that's helped and there's been a whistle stop tour. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Amanda. It's really interesting listening to the pair of you speaking there. See some comments there. Gaynor saying thank you, Khushboo, very inspirational. So I know I've got some questions for you, but I'd like to throw it open. Ladies who are listening in, do you have any questions that you'd like to type, or come on and ask? A couple of people are typing there. Whilst they are typing that, then, if I can ask, you've told us what some of the challenges that you faced. How do you go about making decisions in your day-to-day jobs? What sort of considerations are there for you? Khushboo, if I start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think there's lots of considerations. I think they're sensible, and probably textbook answer is always what's right for the business, and you lay it out like that. But it's not always black and white, and I think you have to consider that, because we mentioned there's so many different aspects of each individual's life that you've got to take into consideration. I think the last 18 months has made most people realise that more than ever, that you don't just have a work person and a home person anymore. Each individual is one person, and actually look around you. You know, we've mentioned diversity and inclusion, and you know, that's obviously what accredited is all about. But I think look beyond just what the business needs and what the business looks like, because ultimately the business is made by the people within it. And if you look deeper and look at the makeup of each person and their needs, you're probably better off doing it that way around, because then you're going to get the best for the business anyway. So yeah, I think decision making focused on people is not going to serve you wrong.
Fabulous. So you're looking at that, motivating your staff at the same time, basing it on them. Amanda, do you do anything differently?
I think I've developed my leadership style quite considerably. So my natural style is very decisive, you know, straight to it. I'm quite an activist, so if I think that's the right decision, crack on. And I think over the years of working with more and more sophisticated teams and building up my own leadership strengths, I've worked out that actually for some decisions, you know, talk to your team, talk to your mentor. Don't just necessarily go with the first one that comes into your head. Just take a bit of time. And certainly from an engagement point of view, over many years, I've had many different engagement surveys from many different teams. And the theme that often comes out is, you know, talk to us and help us make decisions and collaborate together. And I think, you know, Khushboo's point about the pandemic has definitely enhanced that leadership style for all of us, I think, in terms of how we collaborate better. So yes, I've learned a lot, and I would say I'm a very different leader from the one I was when I first had that branch, you know, 25 years ago.
Okay, that's great, because Gaina's just asked how are you both role modelling great leadership for your teams. Has your leadership style changed at all because of the pandemic?
I would say definitely. For me, I would say because I'm quite, as I say, an activist, quite results driven. I mean, if anybody on the call's ever done colours, I'm quite red. So the pandemic has definitely brought more of a well-being side out of me. Making sure, you know, the first part of any one-to-one is all about my people and how they're feeling, how their family are feeling, any other impacts I should know about their work-life balance, you know, before I've cut to my normal style, which is, come on, let's look at the numbers. So I hope I'm a better leader for it. I hope I've learned a lot. And then I think the challenge then, but for all of us and all of our roles, is how do you hold on to the really good stuff that we've developed during the pandemic and keep it as we all evolve into whatever the new norm is. So, you know, for me, it was a year plus of exclusively working from home, and all my 90 people were working from home. We're much more now hybrid. So, you know, I'm talking to you from home now, but I've been up in Birmingham today. I'm in Bristol on Friday. I'm out seeing clients again. So how do you keep on to all that, checking in with people, making sure they're all right, but, you know, still obviously running a business? So, you know, my goal is to hold on to all the good stuff and keep it going in the new ways of working.
Absolutely, completely. Yeah, I'd reiterate a lot of what Amanda's just said, that you learn so much, and I think it's forever evolving. You know, even pre-pandemic, you learn new things as a leader, and you take on the good stuff and you think, right, okay, I'll use that next time. I think in terms of directly answering Gaina's question, role modelling great leadership, I'm a massive believer that you treat people how you'd want to be treated, or more importantly, and I think this probably a few things I've said in my talk when I said it, that sometimes you believe the wrong in yourself, and if it was someone else, you'd be different about it. So how would you want your best friend to be treated, or, you know, your family, or, you know, people close to you? And that's how you should treat each person. And I think if you model that across to anybody that you're leading, or any person, that's a great start in role modeling how leadership should be. And I think evolving over the pandemic, definitely, because, you know, I mentioned you didn't really see a lot of personal side before, especially when you come into the office. You know, you might be out and about on meetings and then you go home. It's nice to open up that added layer and make colleagues more human beings, and you get to know them personally. And it's just psychology. When you know somebody more personally, you connect better, you do better for each other, you do better as a team. And absolutely right, Amanda, how do we take the goodness of all of that and make sure we continue to do it, and don't go back into the old ways, and take the good from the past and the present and move forward to make it a better future.
That's lovely, thank you. Paula wants to ask a question, I think. Go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, sorry, my camera's not working, so apologies for not putting that on. But I'm a partner in a law firm, Blake Morgan, specialise in employment law. So EDI is something very, very involved in. But I'm also a non-exec director of a building society, and we've signed up to Women in Finance Charter and different things. But I wondered, listening to both of your stories, really inspirational and great to hear those stories. But what advice would you give to women in finance to deal with that imposter syndrome that you sometimes get? And you've both touched on it, that you just don't feel you're good enough, or you haven't got that confidence, where maybe your male counterparts wouldn't have that imposter syndrome that we all suffer from at time to time during our career. And I just wondered what advice you would give to anybody in that situation.
I think, hi Paula, I think for me, imposter syndrome has been a reoccurring theme throughout my career. Even to this day, am I good enough? Or, before coming on to this presentation, I was like, oh God, I feel so nervous. It's always there, and it's normal, I think. And perhaps it's ingrained in just biologically how men and women are made up. There's a famous Harvard study, and I'm sure many of you have seen it, but if you haven't, there's like a job application, and there's 10 criteria, and women would only go for it if they could meet all 10 boxes, whilst men, some of them could only put 1 or 2 down, or like, yeah, I'm getting the job. And, I'm not saying that, either end is right. It's about that happy medium again. And going back to something I said about knowing your value, I think for me personally, it's surrounding yourself with people that remind you of this all the time. And I'm not saying that you need to constantly remind each other to go, oh, you look amazing, you're fabulous, you're this, you're that. But actually, those comments do help, and they do help each person at any level. Even, where I am now, for somebody to say, oh, like just before I spoke with somebody about this presentation, and they said, don't worry, you're great at presentations, you'll smash it. And just hearing that made me feel better within myself. Yeah. And so it's really important to surround yourself with people who make you feel that way, because these little voices in your head that say you can't do it, they're not going to disappear, but you could really mute them down, and then start believing in yourself to put your best step forward.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
I agree. I mean, I think the biggest wobble I ever had on imposter syndrome is I skipped over this because clearly 35 years is a long time, but about 5 years ago I was appointed to a secondment which was head of real estate for the whole of Lloyds Banking Group. So just by the name real estate, you can probably tell all colleagues were male. Most of the clients are male. And then there was me as the head with my, my dress and my high heels, wandering off to see developers build fantastic properties and all the rest of it. And I remember thinking at the time, what am I going to bring to this male-driven sector? And then I gave myself a good talking to and said, I've been through 3 interviews for this, and actually I'll never understand real estate. I'll never be able to put a deal together like the boys put a deal together and do a £10 million lend on a block of flats. I won't understand that bit. That's not my skill base. What I will understand, though, is how to get them better products, better pricing, better proposition, better marketing, etc. That's what I've been employed for. So I think there's sometimes something about just reminding yourself, giving yourself a good talking to about what your strengths are and why you've got the job in the first place. As Khushboo says, then have the people behind you to be in your ear and just remind you why you've got the job in the first place. And then perhaps even I've done this on career courses before, but even do yourself a power pose or something just before you go into a room. Do a pose that for you makes you the most confident, and then just sharp breath and go in, and you nail it, because we all do, ladies. It's just that little voice in the back of our head that tells us. That's the only thing that stops us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing that I find really frustrating, obviously, I'm a partner, but, sometimes you can see really, really good female candidates coming through, and they lack that little bit of confidence to think that they can go to the next stage. And it's just, the mentorship is so important, but having that environment and that culture where actually you think, well, I can go for it and I can do this, and it's just encouraging people to have that confidence. But we all suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time. It's natural, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
but it's just, as you say, muting that voice to go for it.
The way I always look at it, and I've in the SME and the real estate business, it's always been a very male-dominated business. The way I always look at it is, when I go into a big room, they always remember me because I'm one of the only few women in there. How many blokes in there get remembered? So it's a real opportunity. It's a real USP, and flip it and make it work. Which I know everybody on this call will. Just take it as an opportunity. You get remembered when you're in the minority.
That's great. Thank you so much, both. That's brilliant.
Lovely, thank you. And I think Rhian wants to ask a question.
Thank you. I'll put my camera on. There we are. So my question is actually quite linked to what you were just kind of talking about. So I'm really new to the world of finance. So I qualified as a banking and finance solicitor 2 months ago. So I'm still kind of getting used to the sector. And kind of my question was, as relationships and networking really important in banking, and the corporate world is quite male dominant, have you ever felt a disadvantage when trying to form business relationships when you might be the only woman in the room or one of kind of only a few?
Well, interestingly enough, just exactly what Amanda said. I was nodding my head vigorously, saying in agreement with what you were saying, Amanda, that in a room there's not very many females, and with me personally, there's not very many females, there's not very many Asians, and certainly nobody else with a name like Khushboo in the room. So I think you take on those points and you use them to your advantage, because you are unique. And again, knowing your value, you are unique. You've got all these unique points around you, and not just physical points. There's your personality as well. You are worthy of being there, and just being you is going to separate you out. So use everything that you've got in your armory to make it known that you are who you are, and actually you deserve to be in the room, and not just deserve to be in the room, and you deserve to be remembered for being in the room.
Absolutely. A very big hitting real estate female worked for me, actually, and she was one of only 3 in the country, and I said there was over 100 people, and she used to joke and say exactly Khushboo's point. She said I'd be the only woman in a real estate networking event, and she said, and what I would do just to prepare myself before I walked in was look at the back pages on the sports newspaper and just check what the football results were. And she said that gave her a practical opening conversation, because very, very gender, but most men do tune into the football, and she said that would just get the networking started. So she had that bit of intel that would start the conversation, and then obviously they can go on to brokering business from there. But that's what she always did to prepare herself. But she said the same that Khushboo and I've just said. Nobody forgot her.
Yeah. I used to do the same with sports, and really try and focus on remembering what went on the weekend before. And one of my mentors, she's quite senior at RBS Group, said as she was becoming senior, the thing that was becoming the thing to go to were golf days. And she couldn't play golf, and not only could she not play golf, she didn't want to play golf. So she made it known to go to these events and not play, and she'd always be there and do the networking and talking, but make a point of going, well, I just don't want to play because I don't want to. And so I thought to myself, well, I like cricket. That's about the only sport I really like. And I don't know the conversations about much else. So really funny story. I went to a networking event years ago, and Sam Warburton, who was a Welsh rugby captain at the time, was at that event. And it was quite early in my career, and my boss was sort of teaching me how to network. He was like, just go up to people and just go, "Hi, I'm Khushboo at NatWest. Where do you work? What do you do?" I was like this close to going up to Sam Warburton and going, "Hi, I'm Khushboo at NatWest. What do you do?" Before my boss came over to me to go, "Right, just so you know, you're going to talk to the Welsh rugby captain there." But it's a funny story, and I think if I did go ahead and do that, I think most people would laugh it off, and the few that would take it incredibly seriously says more about them than it does about you. So don't be worried about, laughing about yourself and with yourself. You don't have to know everything. Nobody's that super knowledgeable.
That's great. That's great. That's a fabulous story. I think you would have been a little bit upset if it was just a lot of time. Okay, I've heard a lot of things here about ladies being the only ones in the room. So what are the barriers to diversity in the banking sector, and what can we all be doing to overcome that?
I'll take that one, because this is a real passion of mine, because my other role is head of inclusion and diversity for SME and mid corporates. So we do a huge amount of work to try and overcome the barriers. And I think the biggest barrier is representation. So because the network is not particularly diverse in terms of senior females, other ladies look into the network or look at the network and think, well, that's not a place for me, because, people don't look like me. They're all, males. So we have to consciously work really hard to change that dial. So we've got absolute targets about how we want to move our female senior leadership numbers. We then support a number of talented ladies with things like women in leadership programs to support them around mentoring and imposter syndrome and all the things we've just talked about. So we're developing our ladies. We do a mentoring scheme with them as well. So again, we've got all the things you've heard this evening about senior people looking out for them and nurturing them and taking them under the wing. You've heard my own career story about, how do you balance perhaps work, family needs for some of our working mothers with the ability to retain a career. We're really good at that in terms of flexible working, job shares. I mean, I didn't get into the details on mine, but I've had 2 job shares. I've had compressed hours. I've had reduced hours over the years. And as the dial changes, you can see it's like a snowball effect. So as I sit here now, I can quite openly tell you that our female diversity in our part of the business was as low as 12% in senior leadership only 4 or 5 years ago. We'll be at 26% by the end of the year. So suddenly, once that snowball starts motoring, and 26% people start to look in and think, oh, actually, I know a lot of people that look like me, and I know a lot of people that, are role models, and actually that is part of a business that I want to work in. So, but you have to work your pipeline management. You have to do a lot of work around role modeling, case studies, and more importantly, really support your talented ladies to say, you can do this. You can do this. That CV, you can do 8 out of the 10. We'll help you with the other 2. Apply for it, and we've got your back.
Brilliant. Anything you wanted to add to that?
Equally, as Amanda has said, I'm so passionate about this topic, and likewise for Metro Bank, I do a lot of work, and my other role is around diversity, inclusion, and well-being. And I think that it starts massively with leadership accountability, and that association that Amanda mentioned. Who do you see? Can you do it? Yeah, you associate yourself. And it's not just enough to say, here's diversity, here's a tick box. There's a really great quote. I can't remember the lady who said it. Oh, it's gone from my head, but the quote is, diversity is getting invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think that's why you must do the 2 together, because it's no good being at a party and then feeling awkward and not dancing. You've got to make sure that you show people to be inclusive, and one must be with the other. And I think banking in general it's grown so much. I mean, some of the stories that Amanda has said throughout her career, then and now, there's massive difference, but there's still so much to do. And I think just recognising that, and moving the dial, being aware of data and the statistics, and setting targets, getting processes and policies in place for various things, to the softer things, mentoring and supporting people and each other. I think, that's just going to get better and better. Lots of work being done, but there's lots more to go.
Absolutely. I heard a quite a frightening stat the other day at Women in Business event, and this is for the FTSE 250, so this isn't just about banking, but on the boards there are more Johns on the boards than there are females.
Wow.
Which I wrote that in my book here because I just thought that's frightening. Now that will evolve because Johns will have been of a certain era where, coming out of certain schools 30 years ago, probably the same time as I did. And, by the nature of their tenure of their career, they've now got to the boards of their respective businesses. And I suspect at some stage will retire. But, I think we've all got a duty. All employers have got a duty, whether you're on the FTSE 250 or not, whether you're a bank or not, to keep bringing through female talent, to make sure that actually when that stat gets read out in 5-10 years time, the balance has changed significantly.
Yeah, oh, that's great. And you can see there, have you seen that, Khushboo, that Gaina's put in the chat? Diversity is being invited to party, inclusion has been asked to dance, Verna Myers.
Verna Myers, that's exactly who it is.
Thanks for that, Gaina. That's brilliant.
Sorry, I was just jotting down the quote that Amanda just said.
Yeah. So
Well, the other thing that's really interesting to me is how do the pair of you continue with your CPD, not in relation to your banking roles, but in relation to your leadership and how you are as individuals? How do you, what sort of CPD are you able to do at your level?
I think for me, the most important thing is to find time to do it, because I'm guilty of just running away with the job. There's always so much on your plate on a day-to-day basis. And it's so easy to say, right, I'll get to that later, I'll get to that later, I'll get to that later. And that later never happens. And before you know it, it's moved on a week, it's moved on a month. I've got a whole load of books on the shelves here that I should have read, and are still on the list. But small steps in taking that time to do it, commit to that time. So my time is having at least so I have 20 minutes of reading time before bed, and 10 minutes is on CPD, on leadership, and 10 minutes will be on whatever guilty pleasure takes that place. But, it's just about finding that time and what works for you. I used to find in a role a few years ago where I used to drive around a lot, audiobooks would really help. And nowadays podcasts, I love podcasts. So I do a lot of listening around that. So, if you've got an afternoon of doing something over the weekend that you can multitask and listen to something, I'll be listening.
What we do with cleaning, is it?
Yeah, I was going to say ironing, but I thought best not do that on a girl power chat. But yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
When we're out doing the gardening or when we're fixing the car.
Yeah. I'm changing the tyres, that's what I meant. But in all seriousness, make the time and use it to the best that you can, and just commit to it. I think that's the best thing. So for me, books, podcasts are my thing at the moment. Or listening to recordings of webinars and that kind of thing. But invest that time because it's really important to do it.
Fabulous, thank you. Amanda?
So definitely books and podcasts. I'd say as well, I try and, it's quite hard after 35 years because there's probably not many scenarios I haven't come across, but I try every year to take on a challenge that makes me nervous, that pushes me, that I probably naturally don't want to do, but God, I get an adrenaline hit when I come out the other end. So, and these sort of opportunities don't happen every week, they don't happen every month, but I consciously think every year, every calendar year, I try and do something, some events, or some presentation, or some projects that really pushes me. And as I say, if you get that sort of nervous feeling here, you've picked the right thing. Mm-hmm. And then just look back on it afterwards and go, wow, I nailed that, and then try and do something again the following year, just to keep the refreshed training going. And then I think the other thing for me is, and it's quite timely this actually, because it's just landed today. Every year we do a huge staff engagement survey, and part of that is getting feedback. I'm just going through all the results now, listening to what they're saying in terms of feedback, and again, just adjusting my leadership style, by a few inches to improve even more, because however long you've been a leader for, there's always things you could do better. So it's listening to my team, taking the feedback, and then actioning with them, with their agreement about what I could do differently following the engagement results.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, thank you. Participants, I don't know if you's anybody wants to ask any other questions. I've got a load, and I'm not going to ask them all because we'll be here all evening. So before I jump in again, does anybody else want to ask a question first? No?
Do feel free if you've got any questions that appear afterwards. You can find me on LinkedIn, so just pop me a message.
Brilliant.
Likewise, I'm on LinkedIn, so same applies for me as well.
Away from work a little bit then, I was just wondering what you both do to relax. How do you, because we talk about mindfulness a lot. What do you two do to stay sane?
It's funny you just mentioned mindfulness. So at the beginning of the pandemic, and I've been saying this for years, I'd love to sort of get into mindfulness and meditating, but I'm always on the go. So I've never managed to do it. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I started, so with work, we have both Headspace and Calm app. And on one of the apps was learning how to meditate. I must say I found it extremely difficult to sit still and do absolutely nothing. And sometimes this was for just a period of 10 minutes. And I find that difficult without thinking of something or letting my mind plan something. And I found that really, really useful, actually, and really insightful. So I have learned to become more mindful. Am I an expert? Absolutely not. Do I still have days where I can't do it for 10 minutes? Yes. But learning to do that, yeah.
Lovely, thanks. Amanda, what about you? How do you chill out?
Oh, it's hard. I've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old girl. So for my 16-year-old, I feel like I'm a professional taxi driver once I've finished work. But how do I chill out? So I consciously, and I learned this through the pandemic, and I've kept it going. I bookend my day, which I think is really important in terms of trying to make sure that you don't take work into the rest of the house if you're working from home quite a lot. So I start the day with a cup of tea and a really trashy novel for 20 minutes before I log on my computer, and at the end of the day I lock my computer out, I physically leave the house and I go for a swim at the local hotel here in Chepstow, and then I come back in as mum and wife, and the day Lloyds Banking Group got left behind in my office. So that's the way I try and switch off especially when I got working from home days. And then generally films, hopefully might end up in the cinema tonight, showing my Welsh COVID pass under the new regulations. Sport. So my colleague I talked to you about earlier, who had to study the back pages, I sort of just know it. So lots of football, lots of darts. And the other thing I really enjoy doing is socialising with just a different group of friends. So I love my banking colleagues. I spend a lot of time given my role on corporate events and talking to them, but actually having a bunch of friends who are just completely away from finance. So you can talk about completely different topics. Got a friend who runs a charity shop. I've got a friend who's an architect. I think for me, really enables me to switch off at the weekends and sort of just get out of work mode.
Fabulous. Okay, well, if nobody else has got any questions, I've got one final one for you because our hour is up. But I am curious to know, what advice would you give your younger selves when you were just starting your career?
So I would. Yeah, sorry, you go through.
Sorry.
You go through.
No. Go on, Amanda. I talked over you. Sorry.
I would definitely relive my career really differently. I was a blushing young 18-year-old who probably didn't tell enough people what I wanted in my career early enough, who didn't use mentors and coaches early enough, and I've actually achieved more than I ever expected. When I was processing all those checks 35 years ago, and I'm now running this significant business. But actually, I think when I talk to younger people coming through now, I say be really clear on what you want, get a really good mentor around, and and kick on quickly, because you can do this. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Lovely, diolch. A Khushboo? What would you say to yourself?
Just knowing your value, all that imposter syndrome, block it out, know what you want and go for it, just back yourself to do it. There's far too much doubt, I think, and I've had it, far too much doubt in yourself throughout your career. Just stand back and go, no, I'm not going to doubt myself, I'm going to actually do this and I'm going to do it well, and believe in yourself.
Lovely, thank you very much. I can see Paula is typing something, so in case she has a question for you, just in case something coming up. But whoop, nope, she's just thank you.
Yeah, no more questions. I'm just saying thank you.
You're very
just what I was about to do, is to say to you both, diolch yn fawr iawn. I have certainly enjoyed listening to this. I found that very motivational. I even half think, I should have gone into the bank, see, when I left school. I would never have thought I was going to say at the start of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that, and thank you very much, both of you. And hopefully our paths will cross in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.